Good morning, everybody. My name is Dorothy, and
My name is Gabby.
And I'm Sylvia.
And I'm Constance.
we are here to talk to you today a little bit about Grants Pass Remembrance. And we're going to start with a couple of iconic photos of Grants Pass to remind us that we love this place. And all of our sometimes difficult, always joyous work comes from a place of deep love and respect for our community. At an event last year, we invited participants to write what they love about Grants Pass and share it on a sticky note. And comments on those notes range from the beauty of the outdoors, to the many kindnesses of neighbors, to a deep sense of belonging and caring and possibility. We have a strong feeling of community here. We carried this beautiful banner in the Boatnik Parade for the past 2 years, which was created for us by local artist Dan Kennedy. And this is our prompt to tell you what Grants Pass Remembrance is. We are a truth and reconciliation group around our history as a sundown town, including the story of a curfew sign in the 1960s on the Caveman Bridge, warning Black folks to be out of town by sundown. And also including our ongoing reputation among people of color that they might not be safe or welcome here. We've been working together for about 2 years, and we focus on the 3 R's of reconciliation, which are remembrance, repair, and redemption. We can't get to the good stuff of reconciliation without first doing the hard work of remembrance. And Gary, sorry, that's my husband's name. I don't know why that came out. Gabby, will you please share your story about how we got started?
I would love to. So I moved into town. I always have to do the math now. I was stuck at 10 years for a long time. I think we moved into town about 12 years ago now. And I was here for about 6 months before I heard the rumor of the curfew sign. I heard it from someone at church, and they'd kind of mentioned it in passing. I'm not quite sure how it came up, but I remember doing a double take. My brother is biracial, and he was going to be coming to visit us in like the next month or so. And oh my goodness, I wanted to know. I wanted to know why that sign went up, why that sign came down. Did someone just take it down, or is it different now? Are people still like that? Like, what is the story here? I need to know. And that person couldn't help me in any way. That was about the extent of their knowledge. And so that really opened a door for me of wanting to know. And as I continued to kind of ask neighbors, as I got to know Grants Pass more and more, realizing that not many of us knew much more than that. And so I started to do my own research. I had not been familiar with the term Sundown Town before that, and learned about that term, learned that there were some people that had done research in oral history collection before. And as I got to know more about it, I started to do a lot of reading. And in my reading, I learned about Brian Stevenson and his work out in Alabama. He wrote a book called Just Mercy, which has been turned into a movie as well, which I haven't seen yet. But that book was striking for me. It shifted things, and it helped me realize, wait, there are some things we can do about this. He has a quote that says, truth and reconciliation are sequential. You can't get to reconciliation until you tell the truth. And I felt like, well, I could do that part. I could tell the truth. And so I partnered with a couple other people and ended up producing a booklet that was on our history of racism in Grants Pass and in the state of Oregon. Because in the process of doing my research about Grants Pass, I also learned that Oregon as a whole state has a history as well. And in that process, I sent an email to the Equal Justice Initiative, which is Brian Stevenson's organization, just saying thank you, because it meant so much for someone to pave a path of, no, we can move forward. We're not just stuck here. We can move forward. And someone from his organization sent an email back saying, hey, there's someone else doing work in Oregon. You two should connect. And that was Taylor Stewart, who had just started a organization called Oregon Remembrance Project. The Oregon Remembrance Project is an organization that partners with communities to do truth and reconciliation work. And so when I connected with him, I said, hey, I want to do work around our Sundown Town history. And he was like, oh my goodness, this is the work that I do and want to do for the rest of my life. Let's do it. And I was so excited about that. And I kind of thought he would be doing it. He holds this story. I actually forgot about this part. He was like, oh, no, you're still doing this. I'm not going to be the only one that's doing it. We're going to do this together. And so that is how we kind of got on this path. So Taylor we started into town around, I think it was 2021, and we did some gatherings with large groups, and out of those gatherings, a group of us said, we want to caretake this, and we want to see this happen, and we then embarked on a year of, what does this look like? How do we do this work? What is the spirit of this work? We didn't do any events that first year, and that was how Grants Pass Remembrance was born. And in that season, there was this forming of a caretaking group, a close caretaking group, and this forming of an advisory group that was made up of individuals from our local Black community, because we knew that we needed to be listening in close to these voices and the way that they saw the world, because it makes a difference, the way that we see the world, and we knew we needed to have that. And so these two groups were birthed, and as we have continued to move through that second year, we started doing events, and that is still how we operate. We have these two groups of close caretakers and an advisory group, and sometimes they blend, and that goes, there's crossover, and sometimes those advisors don't have any other time but to hop in once a month and say, tell me what you're doing and let me tell you what I think. So we're just so thankful. We're so thankful for that.
Thank you so much, Gabby. This next slide shows a word cloud with a collection of responses to how people describe feeling when they sit with our history as a sundown town. And I just want to take a moment to say here that we are talking about heavy subjects today, but we will move forward. We're not just going to leave you there and go home. And Gabby, I think it is time for you to tell the story about the interaction at the first MLK gathering.
This is one of my favorite stories. So our first MLK gathering, a part of that time was a reading through the oral history that we had gathered starting in the 1920s, ending in the 2020s of this history up into the present. And right after that, we invited those gathered to turn to their neighbor and say one word on what they were feeling, and then to share why they chose that word. And afterwards, a woman came up to me and said, I want you to hear my experience of that moment. I was sitting next to a Black woman, and the word that I chose was shame, and the word that she chose was hopeful. And I hang on to that story because there are moments in hearing this that my emotions aren't going to tell me what is true. And so I hang on to that experience of my neighbor. And even though I might not be feeling hope right now, my neighbor's feeling hope, and so I can keep moving forward. And I've just been so thankful for that.
When you look at our history, it is complex. It is both broken and beautiful. Part of the broken is illustrated in this editorial, Let's Keep Grants Pass a White Man's Town. And this is 1924, but our reputation does persist. And Constance, I think you have a story about that.
My family owns a little motel on the Rogue River, and which has a reputation as actually being a place where people of color stayed when they were brought to Grants Pass to perform. Sammy Davis Jr., the Harlem Globetrotters, that they weren't allowed to stay in town. And there are other stories of folks who took people and protected them from, anyway. So that was one of the anecdotes that we'd heard about our motel. And I still get people questioning, is it safe here? That people, black and brown people who call to make reservations, or their families or friends are coming, and they ask, is it going to be safe for my family, my friends? And I struggle to say whether I can say an absolute, yes, you're safe, yes, you're okay, because it's both. And so that's part of why I do this work, is so I can say a resounding yes and mean it.
Moving on to the beautiful, part of the beautiful is shown in this article about the 1995 rally, in which neighbors of all ages and religious faiths and political views came together to say no to the Aryan nations, making us a hub of racist organizing in the Northwest. The broken and the beautiful so often go hand in hand. If we shut our eyes to the broken, we miss out on some of the beautiful. Like Gabby, I've lived here about 12 years. I don't think I would have learned about the 95 rally unless I'd been poking around in our Sundown Town history. So it's a lovely discovery when you find something beautiful through being willing to confront what's broken. If we do shut our eyes to the broken, we miss out on a lot of beautiful stories. And we look at the diversity of people who came out to participate in 1995, who were able to come together without fighting about politics or religion and focus on what we have in common, to say, this Aryan nations is not who we are. And Sylvia, I believe you have a story about that rally.
And another example of how important it is to bring up this history is we were doing this exact presentation at a local, the Grants Pass Kiwanis Club, and we haven't done the Caveman Kiwanis Club. We should probably do that. But Julie Thomas, a police officer in Grants Pass, she stood up when we had our sharing time, and she said she was here, and she was a police officer at this time, and she remembers before this rally the numerous calls that she was getting about instances of the KKK posting materials or hanging around schools, stores, and that when she heard about this rally, it was really important to her and to the department to support it and be a part of it, and that after they had the rally, those calls went down. And so when we are feeling like, what can we do? Is there any hope in this work? That's a great example of our community coming together for a really important thing, to say, no, this is not who we are, and to have that make a difference. So we're really grateful to her sharing her story. And again, all of you might have those stories. You know, we all have our own connection to this history. So thank you to Julie Thomas for sharing that story.
Oral history reflects lived experience and is an important part of this work. We've collected a lot of stories from our neighbors in Grants Pass and throughout our county, and we have some examples here to share with you. Remembrance is key. And Constance, I believe you're going to read the first one.
It's so tough to navigate these spaces where you don't know if you're welcome or not. That's Danielle Puller, a Black Grants Pass resident.
In the 50s and 60s, blacks were not very welcome in city limits. I guess it was fine for singers to come as long as they were always in the company of white people or out of sight except for their performances. Pearl Bailey and her husband were housed in the Redwood Hotel. He stayed in his room the entire time they were here. Pearl Bailey was escorted around town. Her husband seemingly was afraid to venture out, and escorting a married black couple around town did not happen. That's from Joan Momsen, a white Grants Pass resident.
Because I'm one of only a few people of color in Grants Pass, I feel I have to be especially attentive to environmental threats at all times, concerned that some racist white person or persons, on a whim or a dare, might decide to make me the centerpiece of a white supremacist ritual never exits my thoughts. That was collected in the early 2000s by Robert Jackson, a black former Grants Pass resident.
And Gabby, will you share a story about shopping?
So one of the other things that we've done a lot of is listening in particular to our black neighbors and their experiences. And not everybody feels comfortable to share their stories. There's still a lot of people that are in the process of feeling safe just sharing their story, even anonymously. So we've had the honor of getting to listen and hold those stories, and been given permission to share some pieces of them. And some of the pieces that I've noticed in listening is that there is a overwhelming, meaning these stories are collected in different settings where people are not present with each other. There's different ages and different genders, but there's a consistent sharing of the story of today, currently, knowing the grocery stores and the stores that they shop in, because there are stores where they know that if they go into that space, their experience has been that they will be followed and assumed to, maybe they're going to steal something, and so we need to keep an eye on them. And so they know which stores to avoid, and they have stores that they go to that they don't feel like that happens. And what was striking for me is the stores that they go to are the same stores. And so that tells me that we still have things to work through. I don't think they even believe that anybody is intentionally malicious, or even thinking consciously, this person might take something. But there is a way in which we carry these pieces on if we're not intentional.
The next slide shows some of the things we've done the past couple of years, and we do all of this work in a spirit of wide embrace. We means all of us. It is holding a seat at the table for everyone, whether they're ready to join with us or not. Maintaining an intention to be interfaith, interpolitical, intergenerational, and to extend welcome and openness to all members of our community. What we're going to do now is pass the mic, and each of us share a story about one of our favorite events that we've done. And Constance, I think you're going to go first.
One of our first community presentations was the Martin Luther King holiday. We've done 2 now. And it was held at the Performing Arts Center, and we had slides and we had activities. It was intentionally educational, cooperative, inclusive. The activities like the one that Gabby shared, sharing the words with your neighbor, and it was just lovely. So our intention was all of what Dorothy said, for people to leave with a sense of community, that we're doing this, we don't understand necessarily, but we realize our history and a place to go with it.
And Sylvia.
Excuse my excitement here. I love the Boatneck Parade. And this was the first year that we kind of put these 2 images together. The KKK used to march in a parade in Grants Pass before it was the Boatneck Parade. And so we found this image of them marching down 6th Street in the 1920s. And, that's kind of shocking. It hits you. And then 2024, we've got Grants Pass Remembrance marching down that same street, riding, rolling, walking down. with the It's the Climate sign. We've got in this, I don't remember the year of the car, but Ron Gillespie's awesome car that he decided to drive in our entry this year. And I think it's just a beautiful representation, again, of that broken and the beautiful. And if we didn't acknowledge the KKK walking down our streets, how are we going to start a new story of us being in that parade? So we had a great time. We handed out seed packets, not edible ones to plant, and we had some nice metaphors about, this work takes a long time, and here's a seed, we're going to plant it, and we have to work together to water it, to watch it grow, and hopefully maybe you got some of those seeds at the parade and have some sunflowers pretty soon. But this was a really fun event, and we plan to keep being in that parade, so maybe you'll join us next year.
I just wanted to mention that none of us were really parade people when we looked into this, but when we looked into the history and learned and knew that this history of the KKK walking down our streets in a parade, it made the map for us of, well, I think it makes a lot of sense to be in the parade. And Dorothy talks about that feeling of wanting to just hide under your covers. That's how she feels about that Boatneck parade. But now it's exciting. It's something we really look forward to, and it fills us with joy. So those moments, if you ever have them yourself of wanting to hide, there are moments when you step out in courage, there's such joy that can come.
And I want to say one other thing about the Boatneck Parade, that before 2023, if you Googled racism, Grants Pass, Boatneck, only pictures like the ones on the left showed up. Today, if you Google racism, Grants Pass, Boatneck, our pictures show up right alongside them. And so we are in the process of writing a new ending to the story of our local history, and that's exciting. And Google is so ubiquitous, right? That when you are a top hit on Google, right next to the old story, you feel like maybe some kind of difference is being made. Anyway, next slide. We have celebrated Juneteenth for 2 years in a row in Grants Pass, and this is a photo of this year's celebration in Riverside Park, which was awesome. We had about 75 people. We had Black History bingo. We had food trucks. We had just a lot of interaction and fun and games for kids and all kinds of good things. The Juneteenth that will always be imprinted on my mind, though, is the first one, which we held in 2023, which happened, I don't know if you remember June 19th, 2023, but in the middle of the most phenomenal downpour and thunderstorm that I've ever seen in Grants Pass. And we were under a shelter like this, but it felt honestly like the heavens were kind of beating the drums and celebrating right along with us. And so that both Juneteenth celebrations had a big impact on me. Gabby.
Am I sharing about Juneteenth? Oh, thank you. I know what I'm sharing about. One of the other things that we do isn't necessarily an event, but it's a resource. So we do podcasts, which are, goodness sakes, possible because of Trevor Yarish has donated his time and his space to caretake this resource. And we have an opportunity where we take to interview our neighbors, to have conversations on racism, to hear stories, to really, a lot of this is a space where we can start talking. There has been so much silence in our community around this, and so it's hard to know how to start talking about it and how to talk in a way that feels like we're moving forward and not just staying stuck or even moving back. And so this is an experience. We talk a lot about process. So this is our experience of process and being in process with each other and what that looks like and how we're all still learning along the way. And it's been a beautiful space to get to explore that in, and we want to share that, and so want people to know that that's another way that we can kind of engage in normalizing, how do we talk about this with each other? How do we make this a part of our whole self as a community? And Linktree. We also have a resource online on Linktree. We don't have a website, but Linktree has become just a phenomenal space because on Linktree there's information about upcoming events, and so much of our oral history is available on Linktree, the things that we have collected. And so you can hop on there and read pages of stories starting usually around the 1920s but gosh, maybe not that long ago. And all the way up into current. And there are other resources in that space that are available to our community.
And if you visit our table and find our QR code, that QR code will take you directly to our Linktree site. Next slide. All right, so now we get to talk about our vision for the future. And we have been a Sundown Town in the past, and we hope to move towards becoming a sunrise community, which is a place where everybody feels safe and respected and like they can call this place their home. As we move toward sunrise community, we think about the spirit in which we're doing this work and how it infuses every aspect of daily life. It has honestly feels to me as if Grants Pass Remembrance is not one extra thing that I have to schedule into my already busy schedule. It becomes a way of thinking about and being present in all of the spaces that I already inhabit. And it is not separate from everything else we do. It is part of everything we do. And another thing that I like to remember as we move forward is that we already know how to do this. We know in our families, in our friend circles, in our workplaces, we know how to be friendly and welcoming and inviting to people. It's not rocket science. We know how to do this, and it's a question of being intentional about expanding it into areas where we may have been conditioned to behave differently. Anyway, we're each going to talk, we're going to pass the mic again and each talk a little bit about what we hold for our vision of the future. And I want to talk specifically about holding tension. That is a phrase that really resonates for me in this work. That I'm a science teacher, and so I know about tension as a physics force and how if you have a loose guitar string, it won't make any beautiful music, but when you get just the sweet spot, just the right amount of tension, you can create beautiful music with it. You don't want to have so much tension that it snaps, right? And so I find that there is a tension between the broken and the beautiful. There is a tension between wanting to hide under my covers and wanting to connect with members of my community. There is a tension between a lot of things in life that when I'm willing to hold that tension, particularly in conversation with somebody who I know doesn't agree with me, when I'm willing to listen longer and make myself vulnerable by sharing what I think, that tension can create something beautiful, can be a creative force that we didn't have there before. And Gabby, I think you're going to do historical marker.
So just like with the Boatneck Parade, how our history kind of paves a map for how we can move forward, there's one thing that we have kind of solid that we would like to see someday. We know from our history that we used to have a sign and signs that were up in our community that said, "Don't be here, be gone by sundown." And so we would like to see someday a historical marker that acts in a way like a sign what is our new sign saying? And so that historical marker would say a bit about our history, but it would say about also where we're going, who we are now. It would talk about our Sundown Town history, and it would talk about our Sunrise community future. This desire is a community for us to be community for all of our neighbors. Yes, we want all of our neighbors to feel safe and respected and like they can call this place their home. I believe that the majority of our community wants that. And yes, there might always be people that would say, no, I don't actually want that. I want only people that are like me and think like me and look like me, and I'm going to be active in advocating for that. But I believe that most of us don't want that. And so that's what we'd like to see, is a historical marker that says, this is who we are. Because we also want to change our reputation. We want other people to know, hey, we did used to have a sign that said that, but look, have you seen our new sign? This is what it says now. This is who we are. Look at the work that we've done and the direction that we're moving.
And we want to mean it. We don't want the sign there until it's true. My thing is about softening my approach. My whole life, so much of what I've done has been in protest. My first thing that I remember was holding my mother's hand and marching with the farm workers union against things that were happening to them in the fields, and protesting the Vietnam War and watching people get hosed and bitten by dogs in the south of the country. And so I grew up thinking protest was justice. And it also is, there's a little bit of protesting for something, but I really had been protesting against things. Working with these people, I'm finding that I can be more of I'm working for something. And it really is a difference in how I feel about what I'm doing. I'm softening, that's the term that we're using, and it feels great. And part of that is curiosity, part of it is empathy, all of which I already had, but I think I was using it in a way that wasn't as easy, or I don't know, wasn't as nice.
I have to say, I think you shared that story at our Martin Luther King event, and then Gabby, who is in contact with most of the town, got a text from a local pastor, and he said, when that activist lady spoke about softening, that really resonated with me, so I had to share. I just wanted to say that this, it's work, right? We always talk about doing the work, but it's not. Like Dorothy was saying, it's joy, it's fun. Sometimes I dread meetings, and then I always love them, But there are so many different ways to get involved, and you don't have to come to a monthly meeting. You don't have to, you could sit on the float and just ride down the street. That would be something. But we're not super hierarchical. We're not super judgmental. We respect each other, and if I need to drop the ball, someone else will pick it up. Maybe not throw it accurately, but someone else will be there. I was talking to you. But I just think that it can be so daunting, these projects. It's like, well, what do I do? What can I do? I don't have connections. I don't have a recording studio or a cool old car to drive in the parade. But look at you. You showed up. You came to an event. That's awesome. Take a business card. Take a brochure. Learn about our history, right? Those are all simple things that we can do, and do whatever you want, even if it's just talking to your neighbor that maybe has a sign that you disagree with, or seeing something happen in the grocery store and saying, hey, actually, maybe let's not do that, just being present, keeping this in your mind that this is our history, and what is your vision for the future?
Right, so now we are going to move on to the last slide, which is an invitation to share. And Sylvia is going to give us a few more words on types of sharing that we've gotten in the past.
This is my favorite part. All right, so we have done a bunch of these community presentations, right? And I think sometimes when we were just starting out, it was like, ooh, what are they gonna think of us? This is new, you know, this is not super talked about in all of our community. And so we share this example to kind of help people understand what we're looking for. And that's, I mean, truth is a big word, but we like a variety of experiences. We want to hear whatever oral history you might have or experiences in our town. And a great example of that is the first time we shared at the AAUW. A woman stood up and she was crying and she said, I've never shared this with anybody, but when my husband and I moved here in the 90s, we went to Safeway, and when we came out, there was a KKK flyer on our windshield. And she went, boy, where have I moved to? What is this place? And her group, you know, comforted her, and they had never heard that from her, and it was just a really, you know, supportive time where she felt comfortable sharing it, and we were ready to hear it. And then at a Rotary meeting a few weeks later, we had someone stand up, and he said, you know, my daughter is Asian, and she has never had a bad experience in this town. She has been welcomed, people treat her with respect, and she loves it here. And so both are true, right? Just because one doesn't fit a certain narrative doesn't mean that it's not true. We want the whole variety of stories because that is what makes up our town, right? Tells us about our history, tells us about the work that we still have to do. There's always more work to do, but where we can go. So it's great to have the diversity that we do, and I just want you to feel comfortable. Whatever you have to share, we want to hear it.
Great. I think you can. Oh, okay. So I think at this point we're going to invite Lily up to the stage, and you're going to share a story with us. Get the ball rolling.
And I get the privilege of sharing a couple different opportunities, both from the standpoint of my career in this community and then also what my family has experienced. For those that do not know me, my name is Lily Morgan. I was born and raised here in Grants Pass. I have served on the city council. I've been a county commissioner. I've been a state representative. I've worked in this community my whole life. And through those experiences, I'm often the only female, and I'm often much younger than everybody else. And in that, I heard stories from my colleagues. When you have your colleagues are literally twice your age, it's interesting to hear that perspective. In this community, we have a beautiful college campus called Rogue Community College. That campus started as the Fort Vanoy Job Corps. And so when the proposal to build the campus came up, the town made them agree that no more than 10 or 15%, I can't remember the exact number, would be of other color. When the campus started and everybody came in, 10% was white. And so I've heard from individuals in this community that it brought a lot of fear. What's going to happen? One story that was shared with me is a young man was dating his now wife, and they got in a fight. And he'd left her at Riverside Park, drove over the bridge, and he looked down, and she was surrounded by 4 black men. And he circled around, just drove right up on the grass right up to him, and he's like, get behind me, get in the truck, and he was about to fight the 4 guys. Buddy shows up, and they took him on. They made a point to say that after that, they were going to run out of town the Job Corps. And it wasn't long after they were gone. And another story related to the Job Corps is George Foreman. George Foreman spent about 6 months at our Job Corps here in Grants Pass in 1965. It wasn't a pleasant experience for most people of color in Grants Pass. It was run out of town. Some of those individuals, including the man who told me about the experience with his wife, made a point to invite George Foreman back to Grants Pass to be our Grand Marshal in the Boatnick Parade, and he gladly came back and was. That opportunity to bring healing there. So from my civic hat, those are some of the stories that I've heard. From my personal family experience, I can trace my dad's family back to the 1850 census in Oregon. And my mom's family, my great-great-grandparents came out in the 20s, and my grandpa was born here. His brother had such severe allergies, they had to move south, and so they went to Vegas. My mom's generation was all born down there. They grew up with a lot of diversity and stuff, but they saw the same stories we hear of in Grants Pass in Vegas. A performer would not be allowed to swim in the pool or not stay in the same hotel where they're performing. A lot of horrific things. My Hispanic descent comes, and some of us get tan in my family. And my mom's sister in Vegas was called the bright sister because she tanned so well and her hair was so naturally curly, all her friends were black. Her first son is black. He's 38 days older than my little sister. And I being born here, they came up and we were raised together. We didn't have a lot of cousins when we were younger. We have a whole bunch now. But at the time, it was my sister, my brother, and my cousin, and we were a core. And some of our family experiences are around that, but his mom would call our house and say, "Can you send him home, please?" And it's like, no, he's ours. Around the time that I was 4, we went to a birthday party in town. I mean, they're little, but we remembered this forever, that somebody was picking on my cousin and said, "We don't let no black Chinese here." Family always told the story that I knew my colors because I shoved him down and said, "He's not black, he's brown." But the point was that it was early, that somebody who learns that language when they're 2 years old. In junior high, I remember going to a restaurant out on Rogue River Highway, and they wouldn't seat us. My cousin was with us, and they wouldn't allow us to eat. There were tables available, but we weren't seated. So we paid them back. We never went back. And that restaurant's not here today, but it's still one of those things that you just kind of have to deal with it and go. And it's interesting today that I saw that the rally against the Aryan Nation was in 1995 because my sister and my cousin graduated in 1996 from Grants Pass High School. And his senior year, he was made one of the 6 captains of the track team. But the coach got threats because he was a captain. So this morning I was talking to my sister because if we come forward to today, my cousins told me stories about even more recently in a church here in town that he helps in the child care. And there's kids that don't want anything to do with him. They'll give him the, stink eye. And he just pours kindness on them, smiles. They look at him, other kids come around, they look, and then they realize, and it's, oh, no. Again, it's being taught. You don't just know that as a kid. His daughter lives with me now. She's the most beautiful thing ever. And I tease because he is technically my cousin, but his kids call me Aunt Lily. And at one point they went through the stage, "You're not our aunt, you're our cousin." And I had to take her. I said, "Hold on, we're going to my parents' house." I go to my parents' house where the wall of pictures of all their grandkids and everything. And we have portrait pictures from studio photos of my siblings and my cousin with me. See, this is my brother. But I talked to them about what I would say here today. His daughter didn't even know the stories. But I wanted to make sure that I'm not causing issues for them because she lives in this town. She's getting married next month. She's going to raise her kids here. My cousin's here. He works in this community. I talked to my sister this morning, and she goes, I told her the 3 stories that I said, well, these are the ones I was at. I was at the restaurant. I was at the birthday party. I remember when the thing happened with the track. She goes, "Oh, what playground? Are you talking about the one in 6th grade? I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I wasn't in 6th grade with her. And she said, "We were on the playground, and our cousin and I were in line, and there was a girl behind us, and she shoved him out of the way and said, 'I'm not drinking after him.'" She wanted me to be certain to say, not everybody was like that, though. How many times when those things happened, other people stood up and said, "That's not okay." And that she wanted to be clear that that doesn't represent everybody in our community. And my cousin, when I've talked to him about this, about am I okay to share your experiences since you still live in this community and work in this community and it impacts you? And he absolutely says yes. He said, but Lily, I'm not owed anything. I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud that I'm in this family, and I'm proud that I live here. I'm okay. I'm going to keep being who I am, and I'm going to keep sharing love with other people. And I agree. I mean, I was teasing when earlier, like, we're all different demographics. I think we're both PCPs in opposite parties. But you know what? I would stand by Sylvia and any of these women any day of the week. It's not about politics. It's not about religion. It's not about anything else. It's that we're people. How do we show kindness and humanity? How do we show that, you know what? I may not have gone through what you've gone through in your life, but it's impacted you, and I want to acknowledge that. We all have a story, whether it's about the color of our skin or what trauma we've gone through in the past. Are we in recovery? Have we had job experiences? Do we have a learning disorder? Do we have anything? Whatever our life experience is, what can we do to find joy and hope and look forward in the future? How do we come alongside and say, Constance, I don't agree with everything, but there are things that we can come together on and say it's going to be different. So I just wanted to share my family's experience with you. I wanted to share as a civic leader what I've seen in this community and how I hope to have it be different. I mean, yes, I'm white, but I was the only woman, female city councilor when I was there. I was the only female county commissioner when I was there. And when I became state representative of the seat in Grants Pass that I held, I was the first in the history of Oregon to hold that seat as a woman. I didn't do it for that purpose. I'm just a kid from Grants Pass who cares. And that's what's neat about these ladies, is they just care. And so if we care enough to say your story matters and we want to have a different future, can we continue to find those things that we have in common? So blessings to you guys for being here, and thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Any questions that come up or stories that are kind of percolating in your head? Your story can be a minute. It doesn't have to be very long either. Justin.
Does this one work? Yes, good. Hi, my name is Justin Briggs, and I work for All Care Health here in town. So I actually have seen both sides of that in Grants Pass. I was born in 1962. I was born in Freona, Texas, and I was adopted at birth. And my biological parents were probably illegal immigrants, and I was adopted by a southern white couple. I was premature. They had to hang on to me in the hospital for like 6 weeks in an incubator. They told the rest of their family, hey, we've adopted this baby. As soon as they brought me home, they were disowned from their families because they adopted outside their race. So they stuck it out there for 2 years, moved to Washington State. I grew up in a much more liberal environment. They also were quite a bit older, so all my cousins were the ages of everybody else's aunts and uncles. And I first started coming to Grants Pass because I had a couple of cousins who lived here, married couple. They lived out in Murphy. They were very well known. He was a general contractor. He built many of the buildings in town. And when I first started coming here in 1974, when I was 12, I had really long hair because I grew up in a very liberal environment, and I looked Hispanic or Native American or whatever. And I was told then, I know the restaurant that you were talking about earlier because we drove by there and we could not go in because they knew that they wouldn't seat us. There were some restaurants like that in town, and very often when I came here during the summer, we had to watch out. They'd tell me we have to be back home before it gets too dark because I was not white. And it's like, I had never heard of that before. It's like, what? Is that for real? And the sign that used to be on the bridge, it was probably, the official sign was removed in the 1960s, and still they would have people put up iterations of that sign in cardboard or wood or painted on somebody's garage and still put it up into the 1970s. So being adopted and not having any ties to my family, because I had no family ties because they'd been disowned. I had no ethnic ties. I had no cultural ties. Fast forward 40 years, and now I work for All Care Health, and I go through cultural sensitivity training. And I find out that I don't have a lot of the biases that a lot of people showed up with. I am working for the perfect company because they do a lot to educate not only the people that work for them, but our outreach into the community as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion goes all the way around. And it doesn't stop with just skin color. It goes with everything. People are people are people. So we get the kind of training that we need to do the outreach to the community and say, hey, we're here, you deserve help, we're here to help you. And what we've also found is that when we run into those attitudes that were bred into them as children from mostly the white community, that have these social barriers and prejudices in their mind that came from their culture that they grew up in, and sometimes they can be resistance, but if you come from a point of how can we help? How can I help? All of a sudden those barriers start to come down. All of a sudden they start to say, hey, you know, maybe the information I got when I was younger wasn't that accurate. And so I've got to see it from both sides, especially when you're reaching out to help somebody, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their race or what language they speak, or what their, if they're male or female or non-binary. It doesn't matter. You get to break down those barriers. And so I've got to see Grants Pass from both sides, from the unpleasant side, but from the pleasant side. And I see much more tolerance, certainly now, than what I did when I was a kid. But those barriers are starting to come down, and it's groups like this. I think it just takes education. You just have to reach out and say, yeah, it's not how you heard. It's a lot better than that. And I just knew about this group at Juneteenth. I showed up to take pictures, and it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I like that. So, and my cousin who raised me, she grew up here in Grants Pass. She has stories from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s that are just amazing to hear. And you think, wow, how were we ever like that? And it's hard to believe that some people still retain that, but that's becoming less and less. And it's like people, like everybody here, and just living the way they do and being good examples that will slowly die out. So thanks for being here.
Yes, Mar's the one. Mar has the microphone over here, and you don't have to come up here on stage. I don't know about you, but I'd be terrified about coming up here on stage. Thank you for doing that, though, Justin.
I was not planning on this. I don't know about going up on stage. Did not shower today. All right, fine.
You're so close.
Hi, my name is Sharif. I'm fairly new to Grants Pass within the past 6 years-ish. So my stories are a bit more recent. It's really cool to hear all these stories from before. This is what we were, and this is what we're working towards. And I could go down a list of stories that are super uplifting and stories that are like pretty fucking dark, like I've had experiences with here. But just a couple real quick. First, when I first got here, I worked at Kids Zone. I volunteered up there, up at Club Northwest, right, hanging out with the kiddos. My first day there, I'm being shown around by Kai. She is the woman that kind of ran it. She is Hawaiian descent, I believe, Pacific Islander. We're walking around, and some kids come up and say, hey, are you new here? You know, you're the new adult. Said, yes, cool. And then a little girl kind of steps up, and she's looking at me, and the woman's like, what's up? Say hi. And she said, well, I'm not supposed to talk to black people. This is just, I mean, you know, this is just a few years ago. And this is a little kid. So, like, I understand the sentiment, like, oh, things are changing, and things are. And that kind of things are changing slowly. They are. But we could step on the gas pedal a little bit. But the kid was sweet. The woman I was with was absolutely mortified. You know, she kind of looked at me with that, I'm so sorry. I'm like, you didn't raise that kid. I'm not mad at you. And I was like, well, can you say that again? The little girl's like, well, I'm not supposed to talk to black people, like, unless they're in charge. That's what my dad says. I said, okay. I said, well, how was it? Was this okay? She said, yeah, I think so. I said, cool, go home, let him know. She said, all right. She said, all right, ran off. And then I spent like the next couple years volunteering there. She was there almost every day, hung out all the time. It was great, so that was nice. And then another thing real quick, so being up here, I'm from Southern California, in the greater Los Angeles area, so like diversity is not even a thing to think about, it's just the reality of, you know, living. Up here, whenever I run across another person of color, like we always like make it a point to see each other, like, and if we can, like stop or roll down our window and like the first two things out of our mouths, where are you from and are you okay? Like, it's kind of funny and it's kind of like, think about it, like really like, where are you from? Because we're not from here. We all know that. We are not born and raised here. But are you okay? Like, you all right? You know, it's always, hey, where are you from? You all right? All right, cool. Well, now we've seen each other. Whenever we see each other, like, we have to acknowledge each other. And it's like, it's something I've gotten into such a habit with that, like, when I go home, I forget to turn that off. So I'm just going up to like random people like, yo, and they're like, nigga, what are you doing? Chill out. I'm like, right, my bad. But with that said, like, I really appreciate coming across you guys on Juneteenth. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I see that right now it's kind of mainly like white-led, or you have like, you know, your, what did you call it? Your holders, your caretakers. But keep doing what you're doing. Really appreciate you guys doing this. Thank you.
Any other stories coming to mind?
I'll just share briefly about the Master Gardeners. Master Gardeners, I've been a long time Master Gardener myself, and we're part of OSU, and OSU has a DEI program, as most universities do. And so as part of our training, we have a online module about DEI. And it's a really mellow but thoughtful, loving presentation of the issues. And like Cherie said, it's not just African Americans and Native Americans, but it's all the handicaps and disabilities that you could imagine, and all the wonderful things that we can learn from each other in terms of our gardening. And believe me, I've learned a lot from Hispanic Americans about how they garden, and Native Americans too. But the disappointing thing is that in almost every class of new Master Gardeners, we have 2 or 3 who drop out after seeing the DEI program. They say, we can't tolerate this. What does this have to do with gardening? And that's so disappointing. And so in our last class, I made the point of asking the group, how many of you appreciated the DEI program? And virtually every hand went up, except one who ultimately dropped out later. So that was encouraging to me that the majority of folk in this town really do want to see progress. And so then I have one more question for Cherie, and I'm going to ask the question and then have Mar take the mic over to him. And so you don't have to move, just answer. I appreciate how you greet each other. How would you like us to greet you when we see you on the street?
So you understand that we're not a monolith, so I can't like answer for everybody. I'm not a sociology professor or anything like that. I mean, how you would greet anybody else. One of the big things that I have had discussions about in certain circles is Like they kind of like people try very hard not to make eye contact. So just greet people how you would greet people. Don't pretend like you don't see somebody that you're standing right next to. I think that's kind of, I don't know, kind of a basic thing.
Thank you. Any other stories or sharing? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou, and I want to share my story when I came here to Grants Pass 21 years ago. And I've been a Christian, and I didn't know any English at all. So you can imagine how hard it was for me. And even someone say something to me that it was mistreating me, I wouldn't know that. So I might say thank you. So I was looking for a church by the time, but I couldn't find any Spanish church. And one day I was taking care of 4 kids. So one day I asked them, we're going to go to the church, so we're gonna get ready early in the morning, and after that, I'm gonna take you to the thrift store and you can get whatever you want for $1. So they got very excited. They speak English because they're American. And we went to the church, and nobody say welcome. Nobody ask our names. Nobody say, come and sit up here. So we went there and sit down wherever it was available. And people look at us like a rare animal. I can feel, maybe the kid didn't care. They're kids. I brought with them some books and colors and things to get them entertained. But I could feel that cold. I could feel the non-welcome. So the service, I went there. I heard the music. Some of them it made sense for me by the music, not by the letter because I didn't know English. But by the music, I know what they were singing on. And I listened to the message in English, but I didn't understand what it was. Why I'm saying this? Because when we get off from there, I was sad, I was crying. This guy, he was teaching me something that day I didn't know, I didn't understand now, that day, but now I understand. But later on, about 5 months later, I was walking by after night shift work with my uniform. I was walking by when I saw a sign on the 9th Street, and that sign, it was familiar for me. It was the Nazarene Church. So I walked there, and as soon as I put my feet into that church, I could feel that love. I could feel that people, even they didn't know Spanish. It was one girl who was taking classes at high school, and she was just, like angel sent by God and trying to understand me. And that day, I cried because I could feel that she wanna understand me and help me. And that day, it was like, this is home. This is home. Even I didn't know any English at all. So I just want to say, that happened in church too, but not all the churches. So as things happen everywhere, and it's here in Grants Pass, but not all Grants Pass, it's the same as church. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Marilyn. Any other stories rising to the surface? Questions? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being with us in this space and sharing your time.
And we take anonymous stories. We take, if you want to fill out a Google form or send us an email or write something or share photos, this doesn't have to be the space. If you want to get under the covers and not talk right now, we still want to hear from you. So there are a lot of opportunities.
There's a form on Linktree that you can do a written sharing of your stories. And if anybody wants to share a written version, whether you submit it anonymously or with your name, it'll get in our written oral history collection. But we're also now gathering a recorded oral history collection. Thank you so much for being a part of this. It makes a difference.